I'm here to talk to you about how living off a whole foods-based diet can optimize your health. So to begin with, whole foods are defined as foods that aren't modified. They don't have any additives to them, any chemicals, because a lot of foods today, that's what they have. They are industrially produced versus produced naturally, on raised crops or raised animals that don't have any hormones added to them or any steroids. So I'm here to basically tell you about how consuming processed foods can eventually harm your health, and there are many risks that come along with consuming processed foods. And one of the ones that I'm going to go over are they increase heart disease, they increase the risk of cancer, and they also cause obesity. To begin with, they cause heart disease because processed meats commonly contain high amounts of sodium nitrates and phosphates and other food additives, and which all contribute to the risk of heart failure. Our bodies aren't made to consume these type of chemicals or these type of additives, so we shouldn't be consuming them just because they're gonna increase the risk of heart failure. They also contain excess amounts of cheap fats, cheap oils, refined seed and vegetable oils like soybean oil, and they're often hydrogenated, which eventually means that they turn into trans fats, and trans fats are fats that our bodies don't want, and they're toxic to our body. And a statistic found that, or a study found that a group of 458 men were put into a trial for prevention or to reduce the risk of heart disease, and these men already had heart disease to begin with. So basically the study was to put them into two different groups, and then one group was consuming their calories from polyunsaturated fats at a higher percentage, and a higher percentage of the calories from saturated fatty acids. And then the other group was doing a lower percentage off of both of these fatty acids. And they found at the end of the study that the group that consumed the lower amount, they increased their survival rate, versus the other group had the opposite effect. And second, I'm going to talk to you about the risk of cancer that is linked with processed foods. So the World Cancer Research Fund recently recommended that people eat less amounts of processed foods, just because, again, they contain toxic chemicals that our body doesn't need, and people think that we can't really control the risk of getting cancer, but we can, and it's by maintaining a whole food-based diet and eating foods that don't have all these added things to them. High unhealthy fat diets have been linked to higher rates of cancer as well. Healthy fats, such as the fats that our body needs and that will help us prevent cancer, are found in whole foods such as unsaturated fats, and omega-3 fatty acids, and these can all help combat the risk of cancer. And then lastly, I want to talk about the link with obesity. And most of us we can all relate to how we're obviously all college students. A lot of us work, and we all have a lot of things going on in our lives, so we're all really constricted with time. So this leads to a lot of our food choices or nutritional choices, and we tend to go for the more convenient things, which aren't usually the most healthiest, and they're usually processed foods, and that's why we have such a huge epidemic in our country where obesity is a problem. New discoveries in science prove that industrial processed sugar, fat, and salt-landed foods, food that is made in plant, that are rather grown on a plant, and basically these foods that are not grown naturally and have all these added substances, they're addictive, which is why it's hard for us to give them up. So all these processed foods, like anything microwavable, chips, anything that's made in a factory, basically, that they're all because they consume so many chemicals, they're really addictive, and it's hard for us to give them up. So that's why opting for a whole foods-based diet is much more beneficial. Processed foods are filled with preservatives, additives, refined white sugar, high fructose corn syrup, redefined vegetable oils, antibiotics, and these are all the things that cause addiction in the processed foods. So basically, eating off a whole foods-based diet will optimize our health in the long run. And that's it. Thank you, guys.
There you are. All right, Stephanie. You've got the proposition phrased like it's a thesis for an informative speech instead of a declarative statement. The use of that word, I'm going to tell you how or why, I forget which it was, that you used at the beginning of the sentence, like I said, seems to set it up like I'm going to simply describe something to you instead of make the argument. On the supporting points, you do preview them. It does sound to me, though, like you've got two sets of supporting points. One set of supporting points is talking about particular kinds of foods, and the other is talking about the particular kinds of harms. It actually is organized around the harms, so you do signpost those in the body of the speech, which I thought was fine. There is an organizational structure there. Although the same kind of thing happened with the proposition, and that is that the supporting points, they often list topics instead of making the claim, and you want to have a declarative sentence here. There is an awful lot of assertion in here. The very first point starts off with this whole list of additives, and then you just basically say, and all those things are related to the risk of heart disease. And I'm going, and who says that? What basis do you have for reaching that conclusion? What evidence is there that suggests that people who consume this material have the higher risk versus people who don't? And I didn't hear any citation of any information on that. You did have a study on a later point that makes a reference to longevity, and I think you need to cite that a little bit more clearly. And the problem that I had with that is that it doesn't really tell us what the survival rate was or how much more people survived. It just basically says there's, their lifeline or their lifespan was improved in some way. But I don't know how significant it was, and it sounds very conclusionary. If there's a quote in the study that tells us that people have, they add 2 years to their life if they give up these processed foods, or that people in this particular study increased, had 10% fewer heart attacks or something like that, that's the kind of information that would make it more supportable. As it was, it sounded like a lot of it sounds like an ad for Whole Foods without any of the diet, it's like without any of the evidence on it. So I've got all the claims that you're talking about, but I need some proof. A lot of the argument seems to be associated with trans fats, because I would say at least 2 of the 3 claims are really based on fat consumption and not all of that other stuff that you're talking about that's in the processing. So if it's all fat, that means that it's really, like we said, a chain argument, and then you have to show us that you've got to show us that the fats are dangerous, the fats are in everything, and that's what makes the processed foods problematic, and that would probably be a better way for that argument to develop a little bit. So like I said, I only heard a couple of vague references to research. You need to do a little bit better job on that. The presentation, you need to project your voice a little bit more. I know sometimes people just aren't used to speaking in public, and so they're not sure. You got a quiet voice. You don't have to shout, but maybe a little bit more, a couple more decibels there would help. And it would help to also look at us a little bit more. All right, thank you. Appreciate you being first today.